Where's the chat?
It should be at the top of your screen. There's a little chat button.
We're writing our name and what we do in the school in the chat button.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Just started, like literally just started.
Oh, yeah, we just started. Thank you so much all for being here.
We'll see. I'm on a Zoom.
Welcome. Great. Got a diverse group of people here with us today. Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, Cam, I think we're ready when you're ready. We will be recording this session, just so you know. So we will be starting the recording shortly here.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session on setting the stage for success in your early targeted intervention classroom-based programs. So if you're just joining us, please feel free to drop your name in the chat, as well as your role and the school that you are working at. So, let's talk about our community agreements. So today, the most important piece that we want you to remember is just to be present. We will have some active engagement pieces during our session today, so we would just ask that you make sure that your internet connection is stable, that you've got your camera working at all times. We do have a couple of pieces during this session where we will ask you to, we'll give you the option if you would like to turn your camera off to facilitate some reading time that we'll have during the session today. We would just also ask that you minimize the distractions. We know that it's a busy time of the year. You're going back to school and you've got a lot of things to do, but just to really minimize those the multitasking that you could be wanting to participate at this point in time. And then as always, just make sure that you're taking care of your personal needs. If you do have an emergency or something that you need to take care of, please feel free to go ahead and do that. And then we just want to acknowledge that this is a safe place, this learning environment. We're just here to really learn from each other today. Hopefully, depending on who we've got in the room, we've got some experts that we could learn from. If you're a brand new teacher, welcome to the field. But this is definitely a place where we all respect each other's opinions and value each other's knowledge. Okay, so today we've got some resources that we do want to kind of highlight. So there's a participant guide that will be, the link will be dropped in the chat. That participant guide is something that we will all collaboratively be working in. During the session, there are a couple of activities where we will be recording some notes in that document. So that is something that we will be using. There also are some resources, some participant resources that we will be utilizing later, the environment checklist and the domains and standard planner. So we just ask that you make a copy of that. And if you are like me, that you like to take notes while you're going through a session, just maybe grab a piece of paper or a document or a sticky note that you can utilize during this session.
Does everybody, we'd like you to make sure that you can open that participant guide and participant resources. So we'll give you just a quick little moment to make sure that you can. If anyone's having trouble with opening it, please let us know. We have our wonderful friend Eva here helping us with those resources. So if there is a challenge with opening a document or something, we have some other plans to support you.
All right. So the two of us who are primarily presenting today is me, Kimberly Evans. I'm the Early Learning Research Analyst, so I do know several of you. But welcome to my old and new friends. And then I have a new friend that I'd like to introduce to you. Her name is Allison Frazier. So she was just speaking moments ago. She is our new early learning coordinator. The next thing we'd like to do is have you tell us about you and your experience. So we do have a poll here that we are going to drop the link in the chat, and we would just like you to answer the question, how many years of experience do you have in the field of early childhood education? So we've got a few different choices there. Some of you, I heard it's your first year, 1 to 4 years, 5 to 10 years, or 10 plus years. So if you would just go ahead and take a moment to either access that survey via the QR code on your screen, or my friends will be dropping a link in the chat if you would rather access it that way. So I'll give you a couple minutes to go in there. If you are just joining us, please feel free to take our poll where you're answering the question, how many years of experience do you have in the field of early childhood education? All right, Allison, are we getting lots of results?
Yes, I'm trying to see if I can get it to share for us. I will see if I could get that up in a minute, and we'll kind of come back to that if that's okay with you.
Yep. All right.
Thanks, Eva. Eva's got it in the chat. Wow, we've got some wonderful experts in the room. I'm so glad to see all this experience. Wonderful. Oh my goodness. We have some new people. Welcome so much. We are so excited that you're joining the field of early childhood education. We hope that you guys can learn from each other, ask questions, and we'll definitely tap into those experiences later on. Thanks, Eva. All right. Well, here's kind of where we're headed today together. We are going to spend some time talking about our Chapter 63, Early Learning Domains and Standards. And then we will be talking about a little bit about the early learning curriculum. We'll then do some work on structuring our early learning environment with intention. And we'll do some thinking about our environment and designing our environment for our children. And then we'll be talking about some research supported practices that we can use to enrich our learning with our students. And then finally, we'll close out with just a little piece on our screenings and observation and how we can use those to inform our instruction. Prior to this session, we did send out a little survey, and thank you for those of you who filled it out. It was very helpful for us. We are really wanting to make sure that we're providing you with what you need and what you're asking for. So the survey results that we received kind of indicated that the learning environment and the practices were the areas of need and focus. So we'll be spending most of our time in those areas while we'll be touching on the other areas as well. So before we move into the early learning standards, I just want to start with a bigger picture of what we hope for students over time. So we might think about our graduate profiles. And some schools call them profiles of learners, whatever your school uses, graduate profile, profile of learner. When we think about those, we're really talking about durable skills that endure over time and in through life. So those are those skills and dispositions that we really want students to have long after they leave our classrooms, that they carry into the world. So depending on what your school's graduate profile or profile of the learner is, you might see skills on there like things like communication or collaboration, like problem solving. Those are some types of skills that we often see on those graduate profiles. So take a second to think about your school or district's graduate profile. If you don't know your school or district's graduate profile, that's okay. You can make it more personal. You can think about the skills or the dispositions that you want kiddos that have gone through your classroom to leave with to become wonderful citizens of our world. So just take a few minutes and think about what are those skills. And I would love it if you take a second to jot one or two down. We'll be returning to those skills a little bit later in our session. So go ahead. Go ahead and take a quick second. So I just want to really re-emphasize that those durable skills, they don't just appear suddenly after middle school or high school or graduation, right? Those are really the foundations happen in our early childhood classrooms, and they happen the second they enter our school buildings. But when we think about those skills, they may look really different in a 4-year-old, right? So young children, we know they're already thinking and solving problems. They're already communicating ideas, collaborating through play. They're engaging in inquiry and testing things, and they're, developing their curiosity and their independence. And so, you might have written down a skill that you're thinking may look, this is a big idea, that I want them to be able to, participate with perspective taking or something like that. But I want you today to try to think about what does that really look like for a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old in our program. And then thinking about where those start to take shape in through our standards and our learning experiences and our intentional planning. So I'd like you to just kind of hold those skills as we move throughout our session today.
All right. So as Allison referenced, one of the big kind of topics that you guys were wanting to learn a little bit more about was the Chapter 63, Early Learning Developmental Domains and Content Standards. So these developmental domains and content standards are what you should be using to guide your instruction in the classroom-based program, as well as the Summer Jumpstart program for those kids that are entering into kindergarten. Okay. So there's a couple pieces here. There's the developmental domains piece, as well as the content standards. So those domains are a little more broad and overarching. And then the content standards get us a little bit more granular into the specifics that we're looking for students to be able to understand and some things that they should be able to know before they head into kindergarten. So here is a graphic just letting you know what those four developmental domains are. So we are looking at the language domain, where we are looking for allowing opportunities for receptive and expressive language to develop, social language, and then where we're looking for some support for dual language speakers. And then we've got the social emotional domain. That domain is going to address family, culture, and community skills instruction, social development skills instruction, and emotional development skills. And then we have the physical domain, which is primarily looking at the motor skills, health, safety, and personal care skills. The last domain here is the cognitive domain, and that just addresses approaches to learning skills. Moving on to the content areas, these are organized into 6 different areas. So the first one is the English language arts and literacy. So this content area addresses early reading, print development and writing, speaking and listening skills, and language. So you can see where there's some overlap between the domain and the standards. We have math and numeracy, and as most of you should know, that piece is critical with the passage of House Bill 338, and we're going to get into screening later, but you do now have the capability of qualifying a student via numeracy. The numeracy skills that we're looking for students to be working on in these content standards are number sense and operation, measurement concepts, mathematical skills in data analysis, initial algebraic thinking and operations, as well as geometric and spatial reasoning. We have creative arts content standards in there for movement, drama, music, and visual arts. We also address science, where the kiddos are learning about an understanding of the concept of historical time, knowledge of geographical places, and an awareness of their physical world. The social studies, we are looking at, I'm sorry, those I just listed off were for social studies. The science is just scientific thinking and use of scientific methods, compassion for living things, understanding Earth and planets, the physical world, and a very initial understanding of the engineering process. And then we also have technology. So that piece is just understanding the use of technology and the tools in a very developmentally appropriate manner. Okay. So here's our first piece of work together that we're going to work on. The first thing, I'm just going to go through these steps, and this is kind of the path that we're going to take for working through this task today. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to provide you with a Chapter 63 document. We're going to give you some time to go through and read that. We want you to take some notes and look at what you are learning about what children are expected to know or be able to do. And then think about the application of that as you're looking across the standards, and how can you plan that out in an intentional way for your students. After we've given you some individual time, we will go ahead and move into breakout rooms where we will have some discussions with peers about our findings in reviewing this Chapter 63 document. During this time, please feel free, after you get access to that document, you can go ahead and turn your camera off if that works for you, if you're more comfortable with that as you're perusing these documents.
So we'll just take a few minutes for you to orient yourself with those documents, and then we'll break out into breakout rooms in just a minute. As you're thinking through these, you might bring the lens of how these standards really can guide your planning across a day. And then maybe think through some. If you're just joining us, we have a link in the chat that has a document that we are reviewing. It's our standards document. So we were just orienting ourselves with the standards. So please feel free to access that document, and then we'll be sharing in breakout rooms shortly. Okay, we're going to go ahead and bring you back. Hopefully you at least have some time to anchor yourself in the language of those standards and orient yourself a little bit. And so, Kim, I'll let you take the reins on how the breakout's going to work.
Allison, I think with the sharing, I can't see the breakout rooms. But we will be breaking you out into breakout rooms. And during that time, we would just ask that you work with your peers to think about these questions down here that are on the bottom of this slide, where we're asking you to think about how can the standards guide what you intentionally plan across your day? And then what's one experience or routine that supports learning across multiple standards?
Eva, do you have the breakout room button on your screen?
Let me check.
Thank you so much.
I don't think I do.
Oh, technology. We'll get you broken out here just a second. Give us 1 second. Thank you so much for your patience.
Okay, so at this point in time, we would just ask you to join your breakout room. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, I got kicked out of my group.
Uh-oh. Okay, let me go ahead and assign you and just put you in there. It should send you now.
And just join room.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
The quickest way from a billion points of data to a point of view. SAS Via.
Popcorn chicken is back. Buy any big box and get a
One of the
When you think of teaching math concepts,
That's excellent.
Oh, hello?
Where it's supposed to be in.
welcome back, everybody. It was so nice to connect with all of you and hear a little bit more about what programming looks like in your schools and about how you think about the standards as you plan. And well, thank you so much. That was a really rich discussion. I hope yours was as well. All right, Kim, I think we're ready for our next slide. So we've just talked a little bit about what we want students to know and learn and do. And this transitions really beautifully to our next section, which is our curriculum. And our guiding question here is really about how do we plan intentionally for learning opportunities? So as Kim mentioned, Chapter 63 really guides a lot of our work in terms of our standards And it's the laws of which kind of guide the programming decisions for this program, for the early targeted intervention programs. So I wanted to kind of share this definition with you. This is how that document defines the word curriculum. It defines it as early childhood curriculum means an articulated educational plan for young children, which is grounded in research-based understandings of child development and developmentally appropriate practices. Curriculum guides the teaching process from identifying what we teach, including early content standards in each of the 4 developmental domains, and how we teach, including developmental learning experiences based on individual and group outcomes, and assessing what was learned, and then using this data to inform future planning and teaching. So if we kind of break that big definition apart, there's really kind of 3 pillars to this. Really, it's what we teach, and that's what we just discussed, our early content standards across and the 4 developmental domains. And then how we teach, that is like the developmental appropriate experiences that we bring to students. And then assess and plan forward, that's how we use what we see students doing and the information we're gathering at students to decide on the very next step. So those are the 3 big components of curriculum as it's defined by this chapter 63. But one thing I want to kind of really highlight and clarify is that a lot of times we use the word curriculum when we're talking about a program, like a teaching manual or a set of resources. So I just want to really make sure that when we are talking about curriculum today, in the context of our work together, we're really talking about an intentional plan for what children will have opportunities to learn. And it's about how we plan the overarching experiences, not like this textbook that I use, right? So I just want to make sure we have a great shared definition of that. So, and this is such a great segue because my breakout group was already kind of jumping into this and talking about this. So I am really appreciative that this is already the link that you're making in this. But one of the best ways to make the idea of that intentional plan concrete is to think about what an actual day looks like and the experiences that children are having throughout the day. So for example, this is an example planner of a day. And it's just a tool. You do not have to use this as like to plan your day in any way, shape, or form. But this is just a tool to be able to visualize sort of where the learning experiences are happening, where there's connections, maybe where there's opportunities that are maybe I need to develop more. So I was kind of thinking about through my day, and I took a little example of I was doing a thematic unit on animal homes, and I kind of mapped throughout my day. Okay, so where are students having opportunities to engage in oral language and critical thinking? And then where am I bringing in that science and that math, maybe that physical movement, that social studies? So I just started kind of planning some activities. And I thought about my day, the parts of my day, including parts that we don't always think about, but can still be opportunities for learning, like lunch and check-in. So, for example, I have when my students come in this week, when they find their name, they're going to sort their name into the first letter of their name. They're going to physically move their name into a section that has the first letter of their name. And so they're getting some print awareness and alphabetic awareness in that simple routine of my check-in. And another example is at lunch, we could be talking about more or less or equal or none and some, and using that math language just as we're kind of conversing together. So again, this is just a tool to kind of visualize a day and those learning experiences. It's really just a way for us to step back and think about those intentional moments where we're bringing in those content standards and looking at those domains. One thing I want to highlight about this is that it's really not about like creating a separate lesson for math and separate lesson for literacy. There are moments in our day, of course, where we are really doing that and very intentionally, but there are also moments where we can find some interwoven connections. And I heard already from one of my participants in my breakout room was sharing that at her centers. That's kind of the way that she approaches her centers, is to think about those cross content areas and those cross domain areas. So we're going to go to the next slide. So I have a little opportunity for you to kind of just explore this thinking from your own perspective. This is an individual activity. I have a little bit more of a simplified version of this document in our group slide deck. And it links out to this document here that Eva will drop in the chat. We would ask that you make a copy of this document so that you can type in there. It won't allow you access to just start typing, so that you can have your own. But what we'd like you to do is just to think about the major parts of your day, and then think about 2 or 3 parts today that you just kind of want to think about intentionally. It could be like an upcoming lesson that you're thinking, or it could just be kind of some big picture ideas, maybe get the ball rolling. Just consider the domains and standards that we have here, and start just jotting down a few opportunities for learning, and just kind of thinking about, how does this overview of your day help you think about your curriculum and your planning. So we'll give you a few moments to get into that document. If anyone is not able to make a copy, please reach out to Eva. We have it just in the chat. We have a plan B for you. So just know that we have a plan. So please let us know if you need support accessing that document. And just go ahead and all right, go ahead and maybe just come back, and hopefully that gave you an opportunity just to kind of start to see how these areas can interconnect and overlap. I don't know, when I was doing this personally, I found that there was definitely some areas that came very naturally and very easy for me, and there were areas that I had to kind of hold as a moment for me to be more intentional about, because it definitely wasn't easy to do. So, or it didn't come as naturally. So I had to think about, like, for technology, for example, was one for me where I was like, oh, where could I integrate technology? I had to think through that a little bit more. So hopefully you had a chance to kind of see where maybe even your routines in your day could become stronger, thinking through those standards, or finding those interconnections. Okay, Kim, we're ready for the next slide, I think. Okay, so I know, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're not spending a ton of time in the curriculum piece. We are going to kind of focus on this environmental piece, but that is a core component of our curriculum, right? So the learning environment really is about how we design the environment to create those meaningful opportunities for learning. So we could kind of think of that as an extension or a medium for our curriculum. All right, this is a really fun time, friends. I'm excited for this with you. So we talked, we are going to do a little exploration of a classroom. We're going on a field trip, everyone. I'm so excited. This is the lab school at the University of Montana's Institute for Early Childhood Education. And this lab school serves children ages 3 through 6. It's connected to educator learning programs, research, and community outreach, and it's considered a model classroom. We chose this because this virtual tour really gives us an opportunity to look into a classroom, but I want to really express a caveat here. This is an example to explore. We are in no way expecting that your classroom looks like this, okay? I just want you to know that this is just to spark ideas for you. This is not something that we're saying, oh, your classroom has to look this way. Really, we want you to think about, we know that your classroom would be different based on your space and your resources, the children in there, the programs you use, the structure of your school, all of those things. So as you get an opportunity to explore this space, I want us to think through the lens of intentionality. So what are some things that are really intentional in this space? What are we noticing about how the space is laid out, how materials are presented, what materials are presented? And then we also want to think about the learning that is happening in that space. So we want to think about our exploration through the lens of what opportunities is this environment creating for learning and what kinds of learning could be done in these spaces. Okay, so Kim is going to show you how this field trip works, and then we'll give you some time to get in there and play.
Okay, so this gives you an opportunity of viewing this classroom in a variety of different ways. So as you saw originally, there's some different tools down here where you can look at the dollhouse. So that's from an aerial view from above. But I really liked walking into the classroom. So as you are moving and going in, you'll see these circles that are down on the floor, and those move you through the classroom. And then once you come a little bit closer down here, you'll see some of these little labels that are sticking up, and they give you links to cool activities that you might do in that space. So I think we just want to give you a little bit of time to think about those questions that Allison just gave you, and just think about how you might take some of this information back to your own space.
So at this time, we will put the link in the chat and you can get in there and just do some exploring. Again, we're noticing the space and we're noticing the learning opportunities that could occur in that space.
Kim, can you copy that link? I don't have it on my sheet.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay, perfect.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Give me a second. I'll get there. Kim might beat me to it.
They should have it in their participant guide as well, but I did just drop
Oh, you did. Okay, good. You
that
beat me
link.
to it. Thanks. Yeah, Julie, I agree. I'm like, I wish I could. But that's the point, though. I mean, they have tons of funding for this program, and it is really about a teaching school, you know. So it's they're trying to really model like if the sky's the limit. I'd love to hear, I mean, this is a great opportunity. If there was anything that you just thought was super cool in here, please feel free to either unmute and share or drop in the chat. We can just kind of have an informal little noticings if anybody wants to share any thinking.
Hi, my name is Tia.
Hi,
I
Tia.
just wanted to share. I really liked the clipboards above their cubby spots where it had like family pictures because I feel like at the beginning of the year, especially first time away from mom and dad, it's a really hard
Yes.
transition. So I really like that idea of having that for
That's
them.
great. Yes, thanks for sharing, Tia.
And I think
Anybody else?
Maggie dropped in the chat, very child accessible. I would agree.
Yes, everything is accessible. Oh, the
And
sinks.
but
Yeah, like how many you can have washing your hands just for those logistical pieces. I mean, those things matter for us as educators.
absolutely.
Anybody else want to
Okay.
share?
I come from a little bit of a Reggio background, so I love all the natural materials. I think that's
Yes.
yeah, it just is calm. It feels calm.
Yes, and I mean, there's a lot happening, but it's not like clutteredness, you know?
Sam says, I love the different domains around the room, science, art, etc. So amazing.
Yeah, and even the words that anchor that, right? I love that.
hmm
I
Julie
know.
said,
Go ahead.
oh, now the chat is
You
out
guys
of
are
control.
popping off. I love it.
Um, I think I had yeah, Sarah says this is a classroom like I have never seen, so much room and enough room for all of the different things, lots of space to explore. Um, yeah, let's see, we've got a lot.
There's a comment in the chat about, sometimes too much stuff is actually distracting. And I think that goes back to, the point of the calmness and the peace. One thing I loved is the use of the ceiling as a space. I mean, how creative is that? The kitchen in the classroom, yes. Well, I hope you enjoyed our field trip. We do know and recognize this is a dream, right? This is not our everyday experiences, but there are nuggets, simple as a clipboard on a cubby, right? That we might be able to bring into our space. And so I really wanted you to have this opportunity because it'll really support you in our next activity, friends. All right, Kim, we're ready. Oh, great. Oh, yeah, the writing center. Yes. You guys were great comments, great noticings. All right, so I just kind of want to summarize kind of 5 key tips for an intentional learning environment. I think some of you already highlighted these in our chat, but these are really kind of tips that are kind of ways that we can, they're not about money and materials that we have to buy. They're about choices we make with what we have in our space. So we can design around the learning that will happen in the space. We saw some of that in the classroom we just visited. We can arrange our space in ways that really helps children to do the learning that we want them to do in that space. We can think about areas for talking, creating, investigating, reading, building, problem solving, even resting. We can create clear, purposeful spaces. So you saw in that classroom how they kind of made areas with rugs and shelves. By not closing things off, there was able to be movement, but there was also defined areas. We can really be intentional about separating our high energy areas and our low energy areas so that kids can have that balance as they need it. And it also is a signal for kids, right? This is how my energy responds in this space. we talked about the accessibility. Wow. I mean, that was just so clear in that field trip that we went on, that materials were accessible for kiddos. We can think about, can they do this independently? How can I foster that independence? Can I allow them to have access to things without overwhelming them, right? We talked about that a little bit too. And then we can think about some open-ended materials that could be used for multiple purposes, multiple spaces. We saw some examples of that as well. I think the clipboard example was a really great example of the next tip, designing for independence, belonging, and access. That belonging piece is like who I am is showing up in this classroom, right? So we can think about, how do we bring our families and our students into the space and make them feel seen? And then how do we also make it so they can have independence and build that skill? And then finally, just I think one tip for classrooms is that it can adjust and evolve over time, and watching your students interact in the space is very valuable, because you might realize, oh my gosh, I unintentionally made a congested area, and now we have a bunch of kids gathering here, and I'm trying to, wash hands. And so maybe I need to redesign my space. So I think giving ourselves permission to adjust and make responsive choices to based on what the students are doing in our space. And when we maybe introduce a new learning idea or a target, we may want to intentionally shift our space so that that learning happens. All right, with those kind of guiding principles in mind, we get to move to our design challenge. All right, so we have created sort of a design challenge here. And the point of this is that, we walk into spaces in schools, right? And we're given a space, and that's it. And we may or may not have materials, and we kind of have to make it a learning environment right away, right? So each group will have sort of a little area of the classroom that you're going to focus on. So in this example, it's the gathering whole group area. So you're going to talk with your team and think about, what are the environment and materials that you would add, keep, remove from that space. You can think about, what about, sorry, that next bullet should actually say the learning. So I'll fix it in the slide deck, but it should say, where could opportunities for learning exist in this space? So think about that intentional learning piece. And then thinking about what adults might do or say in that space, in those spaces, to deepen learning. And then again, that children and families piece, how can this space reflect the students that we work with? So how this is going to work is, we have in our participant guide document, we have a slide for each group. So Kim, do we know is there a way to tell them what group number they're on? Because I didn't see, in Zoom, it'll say group 5, and I didn't see that in there.
So I think what we will do is, whichever room they are assigned to, they will go to that classroom area in the document. So we have that labeled as classroom area 1. So if you're in room 1, you'll go there. And then that's how we have that set up. And then I was just thinking, yeah, we have all the way up through. So I did consolidate the rooms a little bit. So we have 7 rooms. So you will be going to so if you're in room 5, you're going to classroom area number 5, right? Just for simplicity, to keep it simple.
And then you're going to work with your team to just record your thinking right on that slide. And we're going to use those slides later in our reflection activity, but you can just kind of jot down some notes. So you can decide if you want to have one key note taker, or if you want to have a couple people contributing, whatever's the best for your group. Do I have questions about the task? Okay, we have rules though. Design challenge. We have rules. I love watching like those home design shows, right? And they always have these like parameters they have to work within. So you have to use the what you have in this space. Like you can't say we're gonna knock down walls and we're gonna, it has to be like, okay, this is what I was given. I also have for you an early learning checklist that's linked on each of your slides. It has some great ideas that you can consider in your challenge or to support your thinking. So please feel free to use that in the challenge to frame your thinking. Okay, I can't wait to see what you design. Wonderful, wonderful educators. Let's do it. Okay.
All right. Anyone have questions before we move
If
you to
you're
the room?
unclear, if we're unclear about like which group we're in, I'm okay with you guys. I'm just okay with like, we don't know what group we're in. We're going to choose one of these slides and start working on it. Okay. Like, let's just be aware that if we don't know if we're group 5 or we're group whatever, as a group, just kind of make a decision and kind of grab a slide and start working on it. We'll try our best to organize by our room numbers, but I want to make sure that that caveat is announced in case it's confusing. All right, friends, let's do it. Wow, I feel like we could spend so much time with the design
To that, yeah.
challenge.
Could
What
see
about
for like
children
holidays
and
or
family
time
services?
their pictures and things like
Facilitate finger painting or
That was really short.
shaving cream. You know what I mean? You have that
was
flat
really short.
surface.
Do you
That's
guys want a
nice.
few?
Yeah, if that
We can give you a few more minutes. Does anybody want more time on the design challenge? This is one of our, important areas. I think it was really fun. We were like really getting into it. So, do we want to go back out for maybe a few more minutes and just maybe finish some thinking? Does that sound good? Is that okay, Kim?
Some
I
of
think
our
we're.
members couldn't get into the slideshow for quite a while.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go back out and let's give it a little more time because I think the conversation was worthwhile and rich. And I think we're okay on time. So let's do it. Kim's going to break us out in a second. So you should have a room in a second. Oh, no. Thank you.
Like a sectioned off place right now.
Thank you so much, everybody.
I feel like
I
that should be in
understand
a
that
more
the logistics were a little tricky.
I understand more logistics.
So
That was
thank
much
you so
better.
much for coming back. And if you got lost, we apologize. But thank you. My group was having a great discussion, and I hope yours were too. Kim is actually going to kind of just do a quick little gallery walk for us. I think that's best if Kim shares so that we don't get lost in it again. But we're going to just kind of flip through, kind of just see what some ideas were. And you can kind of just think through, sorry, I got it. Let me just get to my notes, please. All right, so we just did our design challenge. All right. So
Yeah,
we're just
so
gonna go ahead, Kim.
I was just going to say, we wanted to give everyone a chance to be able to kind of peruse the different classroom areas, other than the one that you were assigned to, and just kind of take note of what are some of the things that they noticed in their space that they were looking at. So we just wanted to give you a few minutes to do that. And then thinking about how you can apply this to your own space. Some of these ideas.
Kim, will you do a flip through each
Yep.
slide when you get a chance? Yeah, thank you. Perfect.
Yep.
And some of these spaces didn't get time or they didn't have a group, but you could be thinking about those spaces as well. And I apologize for those of you that had technical difficulties in the breakout room. So hopefully we can figure those out for you. So thank you so much for enduring and being patient with us. In a perfect world, our technology would always work the way we want it to. It would be like that dream classroom we saw.
Right.
All right. So we've had an opportunity to see a beautiful classroom that has sparked some ideas. We have had an opportunity to design a classroom and have conversations with each other. Now I want you to kind of think back to your own space. So what is something that you would like to make sure you have intentionally included in your learning environment? So go ahead and drop it in the chat. Sorry, Heidi. We're glad you're here. Thanks for hanging in. Love that. Talking about family photos, accessibility of materials, great idea. Dramatic play. I agree with you. It is often one of the ones that's most often left out, but it is so important.
Oh, I like the
Oh,
family,
the
like the
tree.
tree.
That's so cute. The power of classmate books in the library center. That's a wonderful, great resource. Just at learning, guiding their experiences, again, materials, culturally relevant items. Yes, we talked a little bit about that. Barbara, that's exciting that you have so many ELLs in your classroom this year. That's my background and my passion. So very exciting for you. And that is great that you're already thinking about that. Oh yeah, lowering the whiteboard, just simple things like that. Making your kitchen area accessible, creative play. Yes, just letting them create open-ended play opportunities. Yes. Great. Wonderful ideas, everybody. Okay, well, thank you so much for your engagement in this section. I hope that that sparked some things for you. I know for me it was really joyful and really great dialogue here. This kind of leads us into our next section, and you'll see that it really kind of complements the work that we've already done. We've we are now moving into our teaching practices and our adult interactions. So we are going to be thinking about how our teaching practices support and extend children's learning. So, you know, a rich environment really is more than just our space, as we know. We have the physical space, and that's the place that invites our exploration and makes our learning visible. But it doesn't, the materials alone do not create learning, right? It's really the materials bridged with the adult interactions that build the language and the conceptual understanding. It helps us intentional model language and learning. It helps us notice what children are doing and saying and build on their thinking. So this section, we're going to be talking about how the adults are a part of the environment. To do that, I have highlighted a few videos for us so that we can watch just some clips of teachers interacting with students. I want you to really be listening for what the adults are saying to create a language-rich environment. If you want, this is a great time to maybe write down a few phrases or things that you're hearing them say or do with students that are making a language-rich environment. This video in particular is talking about the oral language and literacy skill development. So we'll watch this video through the lens of literacy, and then just kind of jot down some notes of things that are standing out of what the adult in this space is doing.
Best ways you can foster children's oral language development is to provide a language-rich environment in your classroom.
A language-rich environment is just where there's a lot of talking. Children are engaged in language use and language play with each other. Teachers are moving around the room and using language, listening to children, encouraging children to talk with each other. They'll ask children to explain things that they bring in, maybe items they brought in for sharing or things that they've created. They'll give children opportunities during group time to talk about or act out something that they've done in class. They'll set up areas of their classroom that have 2 or 3 or 4 or more children so that there's a lot of social interaction. And the teacher should be there to scaffold their language development and bring their abilities to the next level.
One strategy for fostering a language-rich environment is using child-directed speech. When you use child-directed speech, you listen to what a child says and then respond using language that is slightly above the child's level of speaking in order to expand their language.
Mine make a lot of lines. You're making lots of lines because you're moving it a lot of times.
When you respond to children using child-directed speech, you model more advanced vocabulary and appropriate syntax. Another way to provide a language-rich environment is to engage in self-talk. In self-talk, you describe what you're doing as you're doing it.
I'm going to find my name tag. It's Ashley. I'm going to put on my apron. Make sure I'm ready.
Another strategy that is helpful for language learning is called parallel talk. With parallel talk, you narrate the child's actions.
Oh, I see you put the feet under the legs. I see you put the hat on top of the head.
Self-talk and parallel talk provide you with an opportunity to connect actions to words children may not yet know. In language-rich environments, teachers are careful to utilize these strategies and engage children in conversations throughout the day.
One of the challenges in a preschool classroom is really knowing the key things that we know matter for literacy later on and utilizing opportunities that occur spontaneously or things children do in the context of our planned activities, joining with children in a conversation, getting more out of the opportunities that are presented to us.
Perfect. Thank you. The Canva, is it the C? Don't judge Kim's tabs, guys. There it is. Thank you. All right. So that I hope you heard some great examples of adult speech in that. And I did want to highlight those 4 strategies that the video talked about: the child-directed speech, the self-talk, and the parallel talk, and then expanding and extending ideas. Can you scroll to the next slide, please? Okay. So this video, earlier in this video, the clip, they had a really great section on, and they mentioned it briefly here, but they talked a lot about the semantics, syntax, and phonology, and then how those things in oral language help to develop the literacy skills. And so if I did include in your resource guide the full video, if you're interested in going back and watching it, it's really, I found it very interesting and fascinating. But I kind of took the key concepts from that section and I created this visual just to kind of help us connect those pieces. So, you know, oral language here it's not one single skill. We have semantics, syntax, and phonology working together. And, you know, our semantics is really about the words and making meaning from words. It's connecting words to meaningful experiences, of building that vocabulary. Our syntax is how words come together to make sentence. So you heard some of those teachers model correct sentence structure and things like that back to students. That's how we are building that syntax. And then the phonology is working on the sound pieces and being able to say words with the sounds and understanding the parts of sounds and the words and how words are made up of sounds. And for kids, a lot of times too, that we know that they develop those sounds at different paces and things. And so having that correct pronunciation and structure supports that oral language piece for them. But really, these systems all work together and they feed into the foundations for our literacy skills. So we have these skills all feed into our foundations for reading, writing, and comprehension, right? But the bridge between those two things that connects those skills is really the adult interactions. And it's really the way that we make words relevant to the context that they're actually working with in the play. And so you saw that in the video where the adult is narrating what they are actually touching and doing. That's relevant to their experience in the moment. They're modeling that correct syntax back to them. They're providing rich sentence structures, varied sentence structures, expanding that vocabulary, using rich vocabulary in their discussions and their conversations with students. And then they're just playing with language and those sounds and those pieces. And so I just wanted to really, again, highlight that adult interactions really are what bridge that oral language into the foundational literacy skills. And we're going to look at another video, this time through the lens of math. So this time, I'd love for you to jot down what math language you're hearing this teacher use with this student and how she's making mathematical thinking visible for this student.
Of teaching math concepts to preschoolers, you may think of counting exercises or other explicit number activities. But new research from the Center for Early Childhood Education at Eastern Connecticut State University suggests that a lot of math learning occurs within the context of classroom play, especially when teachers are talking with children about how to solve problems involving number.
Want to help me count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Research has shown that number sense is very critical in preschool, and children are actually developmentally tuned in to learn number sense in preschool. The more you talk about numbers to children, the more they learn numbers.
How long do you want your tape? 40 hours. 40 hours? Or 40 pieces? 40 pieces? Okay, how many pieces do you have there? One. I find myself trying to use math talk in every center that I'm in, even at the snack table. How much more juice do you need? A lot more? to make it equal with the water?
Yeah, there's animal out.
Let's see. How many children are in the black area? Is there space for you? So just casually using it throughout the day. Snack, and then box.
Isabella, then finish my picture.
That's 3 things. She said snack, then blocks, and then finish picture. She told me 3 things she will do today.
If teachers use rich language about math, or if they encourage children to kind of talk to themselves or to others about mathematics, they'll learn more concepts.
How big do you think his house needs to be?
Bigger than it wants to be.
Okay. I try to engage children using math talk casually. So just modeling the language and the use of numbers. How many cuts do you need? Is it bigger? Is it smaller? How will you know if he fits in there?
He fits in there like this.
Okay.
I just stick him in the hole.
All right. Does he fit? Let's try. Do we need to make the house a little bigger?
Yeah.
When teachers either ask questions of children that encourage them to talk about their mathematical thinking or how they solve mathematical problems, that they also promote mathematical competence.
Math communication is it's not actually part of the curriculum in many other cultures. There's a lot of doing math. There's not as much talk in math. We found communication was significantly important for children.
Tape more. More tape? How much tape do you think you'll need? How long do you want your piece of tape?
Long.
You tell me how long. You tell me when to stop.
Engaging children in discussions and activities around number, whether it be counting or judging amounts or how many spaces to move in a game, those kinds of interactions are very useful for promoting math learning.
Picky.
What number do I need to get to the pig?
1.
You think 1? Okay, let's see.
No.
What did I get?
1, 2.
2. Ready? Count with me.
1,
2. I did get to the piggy.
For the teachers to encourage children to talk about, say, a wrong answer, to talk about a misconception, to talk about a failed reasoning. Those are all very, very valid.
1.
Thank you. So hopefully you heard some really rich math language. That little girl was just cracking me up when she was talking about the animals fitting in there. That was really cute. But again, the teacher was using math language. She was naming quantities, attributes, relationships, actions. She was asking really purposeful questions, and then she was reframing some of those questions, like with the little girl. How many pieces do you need? You know, she reframed, she said 40 hours and she said 40 pieces, you know. She's she's being explicit in her elicitation of children's thinking. She's asking for their ideas. She's asking them to explain what they're thinking. She's embedding math throughout her day. And she talked explicitly about doing that in snack and in her routines and her centers. And I, again, kind of took the big overarching oral language ideas that she talked about with math, the core ideas, and then how those ideas really build conceptual understanding. And again, the through line is the adults that are supporting the thinking. So, you know, young children really build mathematical understanding when ideas and language and experience work together. So again, the visual highlights the core ideas such as number, quantity, patterns, relationships, geometry, and spatial thinking, and as well as measurement and comparison. We heard some of that language in the video as well. And then we talk about the mathematical language helps children make sense of these ideas, and it helps them communicate their thinking. And then the adult interactions piece, that is where the intentional language, the purposeful questions, the eliciting thinking, embedding math through the day, supporting children in their reasoning and problem solving and their communication and their math thinking. And that is what builds the conceptual understandings of math, the ability to reason and problem solve and communicate their ideas. So just wanted to have that moment where you heard that language and had an opportunity to kind of think about those adult interactions. So we'll go into our next activity here. Like I said, we looked at two really strong examples of literacy in math, but we're going to broaden the lens back out to all of the standards and domains that we had talked about earlier in our standards session. We're going to be thinking about a body of research that recommends some different practices across these standards. So you are going to have in your participant guide, there are 7 recommendations. So this is going to be a little bit of a work on our own and then come back together activity. And on the next slide, I'll show you the directions. But these are the 7 recommendations. These are all based out of an IES guide, which is called Preparing Young Children for School. And this is where they take some evidence-based practices and they actually kind of condense them into some really strong evidence-based recommendations for educators. So there's recommendations on functions, executive function skills. There's, oh, I'm sorry, the second one should actually be, there's social emotional, there's math, and then there's some language and literacy recommendations. So what you're going to do in our next activity is you're going to be taking one of these recommendations, and it'll be up to you, your choice, whichever one is speaking to your heart. And you're going to really think through what is the research telling you about how young children learn. And then you're going to be thinking about 1 or 2 ideas or strategies or teacher moves that you would like to take into your practice. So let me show you the next slide. We'll give you a little bit more explicit directions on that. And this will be an independent time first, and then we'll come together with your group and do a share out. So how this will work, in your slide deck, you will see this slide that has all the recommendations. And I believe they're all linked in there. And then you will see on the following pages, there are notes. So recommendation 1, I'm looking at the notes page for recommendation 1. So if I choose recommendation 1, I'm going to capture a few key ideas from the research and a strategy I could use. Other people might be adding to that document that are also working on recommendation 1. Does that make sense? And then once we've had some time to kind of individually digest these recommendations, we are going to go back to our groups, and hopefully we can all get there this time. I'm hopeful. We're going to go back to our groups, and then we're going to just share a key idea from the research that we dug into. And that is going to be kind of how we synthesize this work. Okay, so this will give you a pretty good chunk of time to explore on your own. Feel free at this time, if you want to turn your camera off while you're reading. I know it's kind of awkward to be like reading on a screen, so please feel free to do what is best for you. We do ask that when you come back to the group that you have your camera on if possible, so that you can participate and be a part of that conversation. We have the notes. Let me just see where Kim, could you happen to see what slide the research supported practices are on in the participation guide?
The recommendations are all listed on slide 21.
Okay, and then from there, the notes.
The notes follow. Yes, the notes are just recommendation, they just go chronologically from recommendation 1 through 7.
Does anybody have any questions about this time? Okay, I am excited to hear what you take from the recommendations. So go ahead and spend some time exploring one of the recommendations that you choose, and you have access to all of them for the future, but for now, just choose one.
And then add your notes to the document that correlates with that recommendation.
Thank you so much, Kim. kind of gain some bearings on those recommendations. We're going to send you out into some breakout rooms. We're going to be kind of brief in our time. So if you could just do like maybe just share one idea you're taking with you in your breakout room, I think that will help support our time a little bit. So Kim will break us out. And just if everyone could just do a quick little whip around and just share one key idea that you're taking with you. We did include the entire guide for you, so I do highly recommend checking it out. There are some really great resources in there. We're going to move a little quicker through this than I had intentionally planned, just so that we can make sure we cover everything. So we're going to, if you wanted to share anything in the chat, feel free, but I just wanted to highlight a few of the patterns that occur across all of the recommendations. So go ahead, Kim. One thing that I heard highlighted in a lot of different conversations was that the talk builds the understanding, using rich conversations and questioning, precise language, vocabulary. That's one that we heard over and over across the recommendations. I heard people talk about the intentionality and being explicit in our teaching. And so modeling, explaining, prompting, scaffolding the skill, and being really explicit in the exact thing that we're working on teaching. Just that idea of that practice and that repetitive practice and providing those opportunities for students to practice those skills in kind of throughout the day in a lot of different ways. And just that being responsive piece, the way that adults observe and respond and adjust to what their students are doing and saying in the space, those were all the themes that kind of carried across all of those recommendations. So we're going to do a really quick little final activity here, and then we're going to close us out. So I really appreciate your long attention and your engagement. But we'll do this really quickly. I think we can do this really quickly and we'll be set. So I want to introduce you to my friend Maya. She is 4.5 years old. She's in an early targeted intervention program, classroom-based program. Last year we gave her a screener, and these are some of the data points that we had from her screener. She can accurately name 8 to 10 objects. She was able to successfully rhyme 2 out of 5 words. She was able to identify 1 out of 5 beginning sounds, and she is counting accurately up to 8. She is identifying numbers 1 through 5. During block play, Maya builds a tower next to another child, and the teacher asks, "Which tower is taller?" Maya points to hers and says, "Mine." When the teacher asks, "How many blocks do you have?" Maya begins counting the blocks. She counts accurately to 10, then stops and says, "I don't know the rest." Okay, our first question. Go ahead, Kim, if you click it one more time, it should pop. What would be some skills or understandings you would want to strengthen in Maya? Go ahead and just drop those in the chat. People must have gotten kicked out when they left their breakout rooms. Yes, vocabulary, attending to words with the same sound. Great. Scaffold counting with her. On from 10. That's a great suggestion. Counting on. Counting beyond 10. Great. As you're continuing to respond, you can either unmute or drop in the chat, whatever you would like. We'll maybe hear from 1 or 2 people. What might you do or say to support Maya's language and thinking? Does anybody want to share? You can unmute if you'd like. Great. Oh, my taller is tower. My taller is taller, counting on with 1-to-1 representation. Great. Number and sequencing. Wonderful. All right, we're gonna actually go in here and just for our time, because we could think about our next moves that we would make with Maya tomorrow, and we could think about how we would listen and look for more learning opportunities. And I'm sorry that we're short on time, but that's okay. We're actually really close. I just want to highlight that the screener is kind of an entry point, but really it's our observation, our planning that guides our teaching, and then we're monitoring that success, and then adjusting our instruction. So it's just an ongoing cycle, and the screening is the entry point, but not the end point, right? Okay, so here's where we've been, friends. We talked about our standards. We talked about our early learning curriculum. We explored learning environments. We got to dive into some resource supported practices, and we got a glimpse into some screening and observation. At the beginning of our session, I asked you to write down one of those durable skills that you would think about promoting. And so I would like you to return to that skill. And this is just a think on your own, and think about how, when you structure your learning environment, you are building that skill. And you can just take a second to think about it. All right. I want to thank you all so much for your participation, your active engagement, your patience and grace with us as we had some technical difficulties. As we mentioned, we do have all the resources to extend your learning available to you. We have some online courses as well highlighted if you want to on our Teacher Learning Hub, if you wanted to kind of keep going with the learning. I'll turn it over to Kim.
All right. So your exit ticket for today, but when you're done with this, we do not want you to leave. So it's kind of false advertising. So I apologize ahead of time. But there is a reflection exit ticket. And so once you get that, you're going to go ahead and just, and Eva has already graciously dropped that link in the chat. And so it's asking you for 3 key ideas you are taking with you, 2 strategies you will use in your classroom, 1 thing you will add, adjust, or strengthen in your learning environment, and then the next question is really critical because we are going to use the answer to this question, which the question is, what would you like to learn more about? We're going to use these responses to really guide how we are developing our community of practice this year, because we want to make sure that this learning is meaningful for you and it's really something that you want to learn more about. So that is where we are going to take that. So you can take some time to either access that via the chat, the link in the chat that Eva dropped, or you can use the QR code on the slide. So just kind of hold on to that. And then I just want to reiterate that we are in the trenches of planning our community of practice, so that will be coming soon. And we want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. You will be getting an evaluation that we will be sending out, and after you fill out that evaluation, we will go ahead and send you your certificate for 2 professional development units today. Our contact information is here, so you have everything that you need for today.
I will be sending this slide deck out as well. So just know that you'll have access to all of the resources and everything as well. We want to thank you so much for the important work you do in the field for our young learners, and we wish you the very best school year. Please reach out if we can support you in any way. We're here to help.
You're welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.